Welcome to the Supply Chain Pioneers podcast, where we highlight industry leaders on the forefront of innovation and technology in planning, procurement, and logistics. Hosted by your supply chain pro to know, Ulf Venn.
Supply Chain Pioneers is powered by Everstream Analytics. Everstream gives you the predictive insights and analytics to make your supply chain faster, smarter, safer, and leaner. Go to everstream.ai to book your demo today. Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Supply Chain Pioneers. And with me I have Todd Craig, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of DePosco. Hi Todd.
Hi Ulf, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. So Todd, today we will nerd out on marketing and we'll talk in depth about it. But before we do that, maybe you introduce yourself a little bit and talk about your background so people understand where we're coming from, essentially.
Yeah, that's great. I've had about a 30-year career in supply chain, ranging from a lot of very cool startups, Fortune 500 companies. So and when you look back at it, I've always had a client, a supply chain client, or I've also always worked for a supply chain software vendor. So representing really the vendor solution side. But there are times in my career where I didn't think supply chain was sexy earlier in my career and really tried to get out of supply chain. But I got some good advice early in my career that it was find a discipline you love, whether it being marketing, sales, finance, whatever it is, but find an industry to apply that to and really dedicate yourself to that industry. So mine has been supply chain, and it's amazing over my almost 30-year career. Watch the changes, watch the acceleration of the importance of supply chain. It's always been important, but right that we're now front page material. If we think about marketing speak, that you can watch a TV show on a detective show and they're talking about the supply chain of some consumer goods thing that they're trying to solve a case. Like I said, it's been good to me. And I had the opportunity to meet several great people like you and continue that relationship with this industry and those group of people over a long set of years.
Yeah. And you have worked for some very impressive companies, right? From Logfire to Oracle to, there was so much. Blue Ridge, obviously. You have an amazing portfolio of companies that you've done marketing for, and we're really happy to have you here. I have one follow-up question, and that is, when you were considering opting out of supply chain, what was something you were looking at other than supply chain?
So I'm going to date myself a little bit here. There's two areas. One of them was security was really hot. That was really hot. And then the second one, really date myself once again, was Bluetooth and the wireless kind of revolution. The whole infrastructure change. We went from landlines to being able to have this wireless conversation that we're having now from continent to continent. So it's, once again, that was, it was a fleeting thought. And I maybe was out of supply chain for about 6 months. And thank goodness I got pulled back in.
Yeah. Good for you, actually, because supply chain can be a lot of fun. So with your 30 years of career, what would you say is different around marketing for supply chains and solutions around supply chains than anybody would imagine that has seen a TV show around people working marketing or the classical B2C marketing? So what would you tell young client, the young generation, what makes supply chain marketing different?
I think it's the access to data, right? And all the information we have to make better decisions across your company. And really, as we have gone through this 30 years, you went from a client server type application with very limited data, very dirty data, to a cloud environment where, artificial intelligence and AI, machine learning, everything we do, the access to data, the timeliness of data, and the ability to make decisions for AI to do heavy lifting for you. So you can smooth out the edges of what you want to apply those AI recommendations to your specific supply chain, to your specific operations and environment is important. So it's really the invention of electricity, what we've seen, just the changes overnight. And it happens overnight. I guess the other thing is how, with that data, with cloud computing and everything, how interconnected we are, how global things have become, the ripple effects that happen across the world, wherever you may be, that ripples back to you some form or the other. We saw that with COVID. We saw that with a lot of other macro events. But it's not just the enterprise companies as well, right? The really top 5 billion in revenue companies. You've got $50 million companies to $500 million companies that are ingesting that data and are really becoming, they have a competitive advantage on the ability to have actionable insights. I know, Ulf, we've talked about actionable insights forever, right? How do I grow? And everybody wants to grow, but how do you grow your business in sometimes unfavorable conditions that, like I said, are globally? So it's amazing the possibilities now and the information we have to work with.
Yeah, and sometimes it's so at odds that now supply chains are getting a political topic and people want to regulate access to certain supply chains as well, and sustainability or whatever. So it's really interesting also from a geostrategy perspective. So a lot of different areas to focus on, I think. The complexities, I think. A quick follow-up on that. Looking at everything you say, data, AI, clean data, making decisions. So there's a lot of complexity in the messaging of supply chain. How do you see this being also different than other solutions, right? How do you make such a complex and maybe it spans over continents, right? Cross-continent story. How do you make this crisp and easy for people to understand?
Yeah, I think there's a blending, right? It's art and science. Marketing is art and science. And a lot of times we talk about the science now. How do we get in touch with people quicker? How do I get in front of you quicker? How do I understand if you have a compelling event that my solution is the obvious choice to the art is in the messaging, right? The art is making sure that you understand our differentiators. You understand that we can solve for whatever you're looking for, that we can solve your problems. If it's warehousing, if it's order management, right? If it's risk management, whatever it may be, how do you relate to all this? Because a lot of us vendors all look the same. And we all do very different things for different people, for different industries, for different size companies, for different geographies and things like that. And it's deja vu messaging, right? You've got people that if we were all the vendors I compete with, if we were in the same room, we'd all look the same, but we all do a lot of different things. And if we're all in the same room together, probably some of us are in the wrong room. But when you take all that together, you've got to combine it right into the customer journey. And the interesting part, the change over the 30 years is, right, we were doing a lot of calling in the past, right? You'd get a lead list and just call through it and try to get somebody on the phone, hoping to find that needle in a haystack that was looking for whatever solution I represented at the time. Now, data tells us that 70% of a prospect's journey is done without a vendor. So they're on the internet, they're researching companies, they're researching everything that's going on, and they'll do 70% of their selection process before they ever reach out to a vendor. So that's been widely known. The new part is that some data is coming out that's saying if you interact with that prospect while they're in their research phase, that 70% phase, you're less likely to be looked favorable. So we want to, just like we're all consumers, right? I don't care if you're buying a phone, a mobile phone. I don't care if you're buying a supply chain solution. We all have human emotions and we have a process that we go through on collecting data. So a lot of times during the day, my phone will ring 5-6 times. I don't answer it. It's interruption marketing. I want to interact with people when I think it's relevant. I think that's the important part is we all want to accelerate things and have quick velocity. We all have numbers to meet. We have quotas to meet. We've got to drive pipeline. We've got to drive engagement. We've got to drive all these things, but we've got to do it on our prospects' time. And that's the most important thing. And that, you really got to be patient. You've got to trust the message, but you've got to build a really solid foundation of art and science. So once again, can I detect the compelling event that you're out there in the market looking for things? And when we're engaged, do we have the right messaging? Do we have the right differentiation for you to continue that additional conversation with us and hopefully end up being a customer of DePosco right now?
And then we already talked about this, right, in depth. So supply chain solution sales is around showing differentiation and the problem that you can solve.
Right.
And essentially, you try to compel a customer to change from his current habit into a new habit that might be more favorable. So you already talked about the customer life cycle and that a lot of research is done before. But what are some of the concrete examples how marketing supports that journey and how people interact with you before you actually know about this and where your messaging has to shine?
Yeah, I think we've even got to take it a step further back, Ulf, is the analogy I use and have used for years is supply chain solutions. Most of them are heart and lung applications, meaning they're the lifeblood of an industry. If you think about, I said I've been in the industry for 30 years, a lot of companies are on their third, fourth iteration of whatever their supply chain network looks like, maybe even 10th or 20th, depending on how long they've been around and what they change. But heart lung application being, I do not believe there's one piece of marketing I can send to somebody, whatever it is. Could be this podcast. It could be a white paper or an analyst report. It could be the greatest program you've ever seen. I don't believe there's one thing I can send to somebody that they read and they go, hey, I want to rip my warehouse management system, my order management, my supply chain planning system out. I want to rip that out tomorrow because of this great marketing piece. They've been through the pain before of implementing, and it's a lot of times it's change management with people. There's just a lot of things you've got to coordinate. So I call it heart and lung. It's just, yeah, hey, I'm an older guy. I got some gray in the hair. If I showed up to the cardiologist and said, hey doc, I want a new heart, he's going to say, you probably ought to deal with the one you've got until it gets really bad. People know when their supply chain's bad, right? They know it. And you don't need to talk them into it. They're living it every day. They're out there on the warehouse floor. They're out there trying to fix their forecasts or trying to find more stock because their inventory, because they've got a stock out, or they're liquidating distressed inventory, or right, they're shipping orders that have the wrong items and their customer service department's blown up. They know they've got a problem. I've got to understand, once again, go back, that compelling event. Can we diagnose that compelling event and make sure that we're in place, whatever you look at, that my solution is in place once I understand you're in market and you're looking. So if I've got to be in all those channels, I've got to be there for search. First thing somebody's going to do is search. Next thing they're going to do is probably ask their peers, companies they're working with, what are you using? How are you fixing it? They might go to associations, industries. They might go to analysts. They might read a magazine, right? There's multitude of channels that they look for, and they combine all that information. So I've got to make sure I understand back to the journey, where these prospects, where these companies that are having supply chain challenges are looking, and then make sure I'm the obvious choice in each of those channels. So it's around strategy. When you see somebody in market, how do we directly interact with them? And then how on the periphery do we interact with them? And that's, once again, I hate to keep coming back to it, but that's the blending the art and the science and timing, right? Timing is important. If I'm marketing a phone, we'll keep using that example. If I'm marketing a phone to you and you bought one last week, well, that's no good as well. Yeah. I've got to understand your timing, your journey, make sure my message and solution is relevant to your timing and your challenges at that particular moment.
Yeah. That was great. And it's good that you come back to certain elements, right? It helps build the story. But more importantly, you mentioned something that's a perfect segue to my next question. I'm not the biggest fan of segues, but we do it anyway. And that is analysts, right? You talked about analysts being a key component of our buyer journey. And you spent quite a significant amount of time looking at analyst relationships, how to build them, and how important they are in a buying journey, especially for supply chain solutions. And I was very curious about that point, especially because you put some numbers to that as well. So can you maybe elaborate a little bit on the importance of the analysts and how to work together with them?
Yeah, I think it's important a lot of people look at it as an analyst as adversaries, right? It's a very contentious relationship at times. Analysts are there to guide companies. And it's our job as vendors to make sure that they have the right information to present back to their customers. They've got a great business model, right? They work with vendors on this end, and they work with end user companies that are trying to solve problems on this end, and they're in the middle. What a great industry to have two streams there. Maybe we can figure that out later. We can build something like that. But it's up to us as vendors to make sure, an analyst, let me back up a little bit. An analyst, what we see for the most part is a lot of written research, right? We see the written research, but what you don't see is the conversations that are happening in the background. And you've got to, as a vendor, make sure that the analysts you're working with, whether you like each other personally or not, they've got to be informed, right? They may disagree with you, but they're giving you market feedback, and market feedback is incredible. How do we all change? Sometimes we don't want to hear that we've got some blemishes here and there and that we need to touch some things up, but you've got to look at them. They're talking to a ton of end user companies. So my goal, yes, I want to be in every research report. If it's quadrant, I want to be top or as far over or as well represented fairly as vis-a-vis the industry or our competitors. That's all we can ask for. But the most important things are those conversations. So once again, if we're working with a prospect and they've got a certain problem, a certain industry, a certain process, maybe for a company a certain size, whatever it may be, that the analysts know that DePosco right now is the obvious choice, or we're on that short list. It's those conversations that are so important. And yes, the written research is important. Us marketers, if it's good and favorable for us, we blast it out and we tell everybody how great we are. But it's those conversations that happen in the background. And that happens with, once again, the vendor understanding that it's up to them to make sure the analysts have the greatest information, the most up-to-date information about your company so they can represent you when the time comes with a prospect that's having challenges that you can fix.
Yeah. They seem to be really important because you looked at it from a project value in one of your write-ups I see here, and you said that as soon as it hits like 1 million a project in value, essentially for 90% of the deals, analysts are involved, right? So they're seemingly playing a very important role in the whole landscape that we have in supply chains.
It's right. A lot of these things, depending, especially at the enterprise level, at the Uber enterprise level, think about some of the costs of these. You mentioned 1 million. You talk about hundreds of millions that people are spending on their network. I'm just a simple marketer, and I would be scared spending money at that level and want some. You're going to need every piece of research, resource, validation, credibility to make that decision. And you've got to, once again, you got to put yourself in the prospect's journey. Can you imagine signing that contract? It's a career. Sometimes it can be a career builder or a career breaker. Hopefully more than ever, it's a career builder that you're changing, right? You're changing the dynamics, the operational dynamics of a company. But there's some risk. There's risk in everything, inherent in everything we do. So those analysts can help you vet solutions, underscore you're making the right decision. And nothing has 100% probability, but boy, I'd be looking for every little piece of input I could if I was signing contracts of that nature.
Yeah. No, I actually had an experience like this once where I was vetting the supply chain setup in a contract that was $4 billion. And we were supplying goods to them. Luckily, I was 29 and snobbish enough to think I have everything figured out, and I just try to do it by my own. But these days I would definitely ask somebody else as well, because it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. I'd have trouble spending that personally, much less spending somebody else's money.
It was a big project for sure.
Well, you're still here, so I think it worked out, right?
Yeah, I think it worked out actually. It's fine. Okay, now this is our listeners. A lot of them are actually from the operational field and implement software solutions. So they're on the other side of yours. But what I see often is that they struggle with the internal change management. So you present them all that great messaging, and then somebody else comes in and has to implement it, and maybe they didn't have exposure to the sales and marketing team. They don't really know how you would position it. and they have to come up with their own taglines and their own idea on how to build messaging around it. And that's actually something we see quite often. So for me, my question now is, what are your top 3 tips that you have for these aspiring change managers on how to come up with a good storyline and a good tagline for their internal project they have to implement a solution?
Yeah, top 3. Wow. I think when you look at it, and when the question you asked earlier, what's changed over 30 years? If I even step back a few more steps, nobody wants to be a system integrator. No company, they're system integrators for that purpose, but the company doesn't want to do that. They want a plug and play solution as much as they can. And that's where they're aimed, right? That's where they're focusing their resources. The idea now that change management can happen over 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, that you're going to buy a solution. I think the stats say now that the solution you buy, whatever discipline in supply chain it is, you need a 6-month ROI. And if you can't prove that ROI in 6 months, if it's 12 or 18 months, people lose sight of that. So they need something that's going to plug and play very rapidly. And but that goes back to it. I'd love to talk bad about competitors and things like that. But in reality, a lot of these software solutions, the majority of them work. Majority of them in a perfect environment do what they're supposed to do. It's the people, to your point, the change management, that's the hardest part. Everybody's going to want to revert back to Excel or some formula that they've worked in the background. How do you, and this may be back to your 3 points, how do you paint a picture of success? Understanding where you are today, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. So benchmarking, here's your problem, right? Here's your problem. Here's how we're going to solve it. And here's what the expected outcome is going to be. I know that's value selling or all that good stuff, but that doesn't change. And I think if people see a pathway, it's incredibly important that they understand the journey that they're on. It doesn't happen overnight. You got to have a good leader. You've got to have a good plan, and you've got to have that good software partner, right, that's going to be able to tie all those things together. But I think it's as well, we talk about it all the time. We'd like to think that we know everything. Back to your 29-year-old, even as vendors, we'd like to think we know everything. But a lot of the times we don't know until we pop the hood on the car, right? And really get in there. And that's where flexibility, being flexible, being adaptable, being able to change and look at those situations. And once again, align the solution, align the people under a good leader and a good plan. And I think that's that's the blueprint to any success in anything we do in life.
Yeah. I think especially early on also it's about listening and iterating, right? I think what I take away from your messaging as well is you have to listen to your internal folks, understand their issues they have and why Excel is so great, which everybody will tell you.
Yeah, and if everything goes to plan, that's great. Let me know when that happens. Let me know when that happens. Like I said, you'll get in there, pop the hood, and the customer might tell you about a different selling channel or a different marketplace or a different integration that they didn't have at the beginning. So is your solution built to be flexible? Are your people flexible enough, right, to be able to operationalize that, if I can say that correctly, and get that, once again, not just get that flow or get that process going, but do it in the expected time frame where they're expecting ROI.
Yeah.
Because every customer wants a flawless experience, but you've got to be able to deliver that through flexibility.
Yeah. So I want to go back in time only a little bit. So not too long, maybe 20 years, where you have been part of a very major acquisition. We probably can talk about this because I don't think it's a big secret that Logfire has been acquired by Oracle to then later become OTM. So it's a major acquisition. And being part of that journey, how was that? Because from a marketing perspective, I'm pretty sure you were involved in building a storyline on why that should happen and also painting a future vision. And just talk a little bit about this experience maybe.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's one that I continually go through. And so I'll talk about that experience and relate it to things where I think I excel and my team excels. At that time, Logfire was the first cloud WMS, or one of the only ones around, right? We were not only pitching a company that was in a very established industry, we were also telling people that they were doing it incorrectly, or that the cloud was a better option. And I think back to the heart and lung applications kind of comment, if your planning system goes down, right, do it tomorrow. We'll run the demand forecast tomorrow, or we'll run it in 4 hours time. If you are fulfilling 5,000 orders a day as a mid-sized company, in your warehouse management system, your order management system, if anything like that has any hiccups, your automation associated with it, you're in a world of hurt. Those heart and lung applications are really important. So we were pitching with the cloud, and it was crazy, right? We knew the kind of sales engagement and marketing engagement we were going to be in by the competitors that were in there with us. So if they were traditional competitors, right, it was going to be a 9-month sales cycle, 9 to 12-month sales cycle. If they were cloud, let's say they had NetSuite, right? If they had NetSuite or something like that, or Shopify, we knew it was going to be accelerated a path to them being a customer. But it's fun. It's fun competing against the odds. It's fun competing against the establishment. A lot of times I've got a little bit of rebel in me, a little bit to fight back, but I've been part of that establishment, but it's fun competing against them. So once again, a new way, cloud, competing against people that have been there for 30 plus years. And that's where the messaging is important. That's where the differentiation is important. That's where finding people that don't want to continue to do the same thing. Who are the true changers? Who are the true change agents in a company? And they're going to, at the time, they were the folks that were going to lean towards cloud. They were the folks that were going to make this happen. If I relate that to what I'm doing today, DePosco, one of the cloud leaders in the space, we have big aspirations and we're making gains on them every day. But it goes back also, it's not just the solution. It's how are you opening that solution up and making it easy? So we talk about 3 tenets. There's speed to market, right? Can we get you up and going very quickly? Simplicity. A lot of people want to sell you a nightmare. They want to sell you a problem. It's fear-based tactics, if I bring it back to marketing. Oh, it's so complex. You're so complex. Only we can fix you. Yes, things are complex, but you have to have a solution, and that integration structure at DePosco, we call them sockets. We have 200 plus, that whatever environment we go into, whether it's automation, ERP, CRM, marketplaces, whatever it is, can we plug in, can our core solution work, but can it plug in all the data sources, all the automation sources, all the other processes around it? And that's speed and that's simplicity. And then it's a platform for growth. Think about, yes, we're up and running. You love us. You like us today. We want you to love us tomorrow. And that's having a platform to grow on, right? Do you have as an organization, we use the example, if you add another marketplace, can we get that marketplace up and running without custom code, without SIs, without all these other things going on? Can we make that inherently easy to your staff and our staff, where you can, let's say you're a 3PL, you can spin up a new customer very rapidly without our help. You can spin up employees without our help, right? That it's very easy to get your employees up and running and then upscale them. Simplicity, speed, and growth is how I look at it now. And that's what's fueled the cloud revolution in the past that I've been part of. And that's really still, it's modifying itself with simplicity now, moving from complexity to simplicity. But, it's back to that data we talked about in the beginning, that we have the ability to do this through all the data points and the platform for growth.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Felt like a word salad there. I hope it.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's just a quick follow-up maybe on this is so we have talked about the big world of Oracle, right? You're in a big company and then you are in a small aggressive startup, and now you also want to conquer the world. Are there any do's and don'ts which you have in a big company where you would in a smaller startup maybe be a little bit more aggressive in marketing? Or is it these days that you can do anything in any company?
Wow, good question. There's pros and cons to being in each of them, right? There are times I wish we had the awareness of a larger company. But as well, I think, what we've got to do as marketers, large or small companies, to make our customers successful, right? We've got to be the change agents for them. We've got to be the growth guides for them. We've got to make sure our success is predicated on our customers' success. And with cloud, right, I say this a lot of times, and I don't mean my sales leaders that I'm working with. The first sale is the easiest sale, right? And because we don't have a track record together. You may have done analyst research and you may have talked to customers that work with us to make sure we're credible and we can deliver on our promises. But at the end of the day, we're making a promise to you on that first sale. In a cloud SaaS environment, contracts are usually about 3 years. Usually, you've got 3 years to work with us to figure out if you're going to continue on the next phase of our journey. And that could be just keeping status quo, could be adding solutions, it could be a multiple things. But it's promise maker, promise keeper. So we've got to make that promise, but keep that promise. I just celebrated a 24th anniversary with my wife, and jokingly I said, if I were a cloud or a SaaS husband, she'd have 3 years with me every year. And I don't know if we'd have seen yesterday or our 24th year. Keeping the customer, large or small, keeping the customer is the main thing. And that's the customer success. If they have success, they're going to tell other people about it. You're going to be able to, as a marketer, have that gold in your back pocket to share with everybody else. And that's how you drive real results, real tangible results. There's a lot of quick things you can do. They're not the right long-term things most of the time. And if you really understand that, and once again, just keep the main thing, and that's the customer and their success.
By the way, knowing you for some time, I'm pretty sure she would have renewed every 3 years as well. So that's fine. I'm confident. Anyway, so let's talk about marketing from a technology standpoint, because I think it has tremendously changed, especially after COVID. A lot of new digital solutions came on, and account-based marketing now is all the rage. But what is something that you are looking forward to in the future that is currently coming up, right? What is something you're really excited about in the maybe short to midterm for marketing?
We have so much data right now. And each company, or my role, I have the need to produce pipeline and produce potential customers very rapidly. But I have that theory that we've got to drive it. But I've got the theory we talked about, the customers go on their journey. So how do we coordinate and orchestrate that data to make sure that the timing is correct? Once again, that phone analogy. If you bought one last week and you got a half off promotion today, you're just mad at me that you didn't get it last week. So how do I match up all of our motions with a buyer's journey? It's perpetual marketing. There is I think the rule of thumb is that 10% of your total addressable market is in market in a given year. So let's say our total addressable market's 50,000 companies. 10%, 50,000 went to 5,000 very quickly. And then those are the people I need to worry about. Those are the people, I've got to build long-term awareness with these 50,000 people, but I can't interrupt them all the time. If they don't need me at this point, it's interruption marketing, it's going to be angry. Have got to understand, once again, 5,000 come in, that compelling event. How do I start a correct motion and align my needs to build the business, drive pipeline with their need to solve a problem? So it's all about timing, Ulf. And if, the things that if we can understand trigger points, hey, I'm going to pull it back to supply chain. It's like demand sensing. Can I sense demand? Where can I sense demand? Maybe I just need a good planning application with some AI on it, and they can do the marketing for us. There's your buzzword silver bullet.
Yeah, good. Which is a perfect tie-in and segue, by the way, to my next question, because AI obviously has been all the rage. Everybody loved AI for a long time. And then recently, to be honest, I see more and more people also being a little bit more negative around the topic, and the hype that was like insane is fading a little bit. I don't think it's completely gone, but we see some indicators for it fading. So I truly believe that is a tool that will always help us, like a calculator will always help us. So for me, I was always a little bit more realistic around this. But what, from your point of view, is when it comes to no matter if it's AI or any other kind of hype, what is your take on jumping on bandwagons versus not doing it? Because I feel it's very hard to not do it in marketing.
Yeah. What AI is the new RFID? It's the new CPFR. It's the new, whatever the rage was. It's the new marketplaces back then. The possibilities are amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's a word you and I have talked about for several years. Big. It's ambiguous. What does it mean? What does it mean to somebody who's running operations? When they're very logical a lot of times. I got to move boxes out the door. I got to plan for this. I got to run these scenarios. But how do you make it actionable? At the end of the day, I don't think anybody wants to run scenarios. Nobody wants to go through a motion. I know we talk about digital supply chain twins. We talk about all this stuff. There's validity in all that stuff. But we want answers to our questions. And our questions don't need to be these large questions of how do I make my business profitable? How do I change my network operations? Right? It's down in the weeds of doing the heavy lifting for the individuals. And how do we understand, for example, rate shopping for fulfilling products for a direct-to-consumer company? How do they understand shipping is their number one cost? How do we help them fix their shipping problems, either by understanding the carrier market, right? Because at certain times, carriers are trying to buy market space by reducing their prices and gain market share. There's other macro pressures on the industry. I think yesterday, there were a lot of increases for peak season deliveries announced yesterday that happened. So how do they understand that data that's sometimes unstructured, sometimes is in multiple places? How do we get it into AI or a solution powered by AI that's going to give you the insights into what you should do about your rate shopping? That gives you actionable insights, helps you understand your business in context of the industry. So your rates may be going up 20%, but everybody else's are going up 50%. It may just be a symptom of the industry. So how do you understand that? How does AI provide context, do the heavy lifting, provide those curated or actionable insights that help you run your business? How great you get up, I know this pie in the sky type thing, or I guess not really, but natural language. Ask Alexa or whoever, tell me what's happening with my supply chain operations today. What SKUs or what orders are most impacted by this event? If I bring it back to stuff we've worked on in the past, where should I focus my energy based on shipping schedules, shipping routes? Stuff should be able to be rerouted based on some AI as well. Like what do you get the ability to dynamically fix itself? What do you give insights on, and then what do you just give information on? So I think it's making it actionable, right? And it's scary to somebody, just that big word. And we've done it in supply chain, like we said so many times. There's been so many buzzwords that we're going to be a silver bullet to everything. And we know as soon as we solve one challenge, there's another one waiting for us. And whether it's AI or whatever it is, it just has to be actionable, and you've got to be able to make business change.
Yeah, good. So essentially, you jump on the bandwagon, but make it actionable is good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. What is it? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Just don't know anybody who's eaten an elephant, but anyway, how do you get it kickstarted in your company to where you can rely on it more and build credibility? So I'll leave it at that. It's going to be fun to watch over the next few years, right? Or the next decade. It's going to be crazy. And the solutions and the ecosystem around it that's going to develop, this one might have a little more legs than a few of the other technologies we talked about in the past. I can probably guarantee that.
Yeah, I think so. I do believe it will still need more human supervision than other thought at the start, at least for the foreseeable future. But I also think it's a good technology. Okay. Coming to my last question and something, it's my hobby question. We always do the hobby question at the end. So it's no surprise to listeners, but I know you're a competitive guy, right? And you're also a lot into sports. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your relation between sports, your competitive spirit, and your work that you do.
Yeah, I think it's super aligned, right? It can almost be a boring analogy, but I think it just plays true. A team, a leader, and a plan, right? And then it's you against the world. I've blessed to have three children, played sports growing up, have three children that play very competitive sports. You gravitate towards what they're doing and the world that they're involved in. But the intangibles, the drive, the individual drive, competitiveness, but being able to harness that into a team environment with a leader that has a plan. And it's following a process from a football guy, college football guy. Do you have the right process in place? Are you looking at what you need today to be successful for you? Are you judging yourself versus your competitors? Are you being the best team, organization, solution you can be? If you go back to keep the main thing, if you make your customers successful, then you're going to be successful. But that provides, once again, a great team, a great plan, and a great leader to execute it. And then never being satisfied. I think it's not to a point where it consumes you, but I love winning. And I love the process of winning. We've talked about it all. If I think there's some sickness in me that you have the 1 week, you'll have the 3 best days of your life, and then you'll have the 2 worst days of your life. But as long as it keeps you coming back and driving and there's problems to solve, challenges, hey, your competitors could just be a challenge, not just an actual thing or company you're competing against. Do you have the ability to put a plan in place and solve that problem or solve that challenge? And that's why I equate it back to work. But winning's contagious, right? You start getting some wins, the organization feels good, sales team feels good, marketing feels good, product feels good. It just promotes just that competitive environment. So I love beating the hell out of people in a good business way. It's fun. By the way, too, you've got to take your licks along the way, right? You're not going to always be on top. Your plan's not going to run always to execution. Do you have the ability to get back up and solve that problem? And can you look at it from the lens, right, of things are never as good as they seem, things are never as bad as they seem. We've got a goal in place. Let's keep the main thing and we'll be successful.
Good. Very fitting finishing words. And with that, actually, I would like to call it a day. It was a big pleasure. So, Todd, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed this.
Let's do it again. Have me back. I'll do a podcast and have you on it next, Dolph.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's do that. That would be fun. Okay, so you want to tell anybody where they can find you on the internets and maybe where they can find your company as well?
That's right. Of course, only Todd Craig. And then DePosco.com, DePosco.com. So if you warehouse management, order management, supply chain planning, supply chain intelligence, a really end-to-end platform for fulfillment for 3PLs, retailers, e-com providers, and consumer goods manufacturing.
Good. Perfect.
A lot of good stuff going on over there. So there's the marketing plug right there.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. And with that, I want to say to everybody, thank you so much for listening and watching, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
This was Supply Chain Pioneers. Thanks for watching, listening, or however you are enjoying this podcast. You can find Supply Chain Pioneers on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all other major podcast players, as well as on YouTube at Ulf Talk Supply Chain. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. See you next time.